Hello, good morning, and good afternoon for those who are watching us from other countries than Brazil. Be very, very welcome. We are really happy today to have you here to participate in this discussion. And this is the Wind Offshore, the Danish and Brazilian Experiences with Consenting Processes webinar, which is an event to mark the launching of a report that has been produced in really close cooperation between CEBRI and the Danish Energy Agency, which we'll be calling also the DEA. My name is Laís Ramalho. I'm the coordinator to the Energy Transition Program at CEBRI, and I'm really happy to have the chance to moderate these great names here today. Without further ado, I'll pass the floor to the speakers of our opening remarks, which are Ambassador Oli Donkey, Climate Ambassador and State Secretary for Development Policy of the Government of Denmark, and also Rafaela Guedes, our Senior Fellow here at CEBRI and also an international consultant for APCO. Ambassador, you have the floor.
Well, thank you so much, and also thank you so much for inviting me to this conference. It's really great to be in it, because this is one of the conferences that are really important to actually do something and deliver something in terms of action on the climate and energy agenda worldwide. This is a really key moment in history. We are just 3-4 months from the COP in Brazil. There's a lot going on in terms of negotiations. A lot of countries are preparing their NDCs, their climate plans, to present them in Belém in Brazil. It's also been talked about as a moment in history where multilateralism really is at stake and needs to show that it can deliver in the geopolitical world that we live in today as such. But it's also a moment of action, and where we really need to increase the speed of implementation of what we term on the action agenda as such, which means actually how do we implement all the ideas and plans that has been discussed in the past decades in terms of green transition. How do we make sure that we reach all the goals and targets discussed at the various COPs, both for renewable energy, adaptation, financing, etc., etc. And obviously, offshore wind is part of that agenda, an agenda that both Denmark bilaterally and I know Brazil bilaterally has been extremely engaged on. But this year, since Brazil holds the presidency of the COP, you are extremely engaged, and Denmark, we are the EU presidents this year, so we are very much walking hand in hand on these important questions this year. And I've been to Brazil several times already, and your colleagues, Anna Tony, for instance, has been here in Denmark, etc. So there's a lot of exchange and a lot of great bilateral collaboration going on. But turning then to the role of offshore wind, obviously looking at the action agenda and everything we've discussed, for instance, the global stocktake talks about we need to triple renewable energy before 2030, which sums up to a staggering 11,000 gigawatt extra of renewable energy. It's a huge task at global level for all countries to really start to engage and make sure that on the ground we realize these targets. And fortunately, it's not just for the sake of the targets and the discussions at the COP, which is obviously extremely important, but also the world needs more and more energy and power. And what has happened the last decade is that renewable energy has actually outcompeted fossil fuel energy. The prices have come down, I think, like 50%, enormously recently, and this is what we are riding at, and that's why that the green transition in energy is inevitable now. It makes good sense. It's a better deal to go with renewable compared to any fossil fuel or alternative. And part of that mix, obviously, we find offshore wind that has some advantages also. For us in Denmark, we have quite a lot of offshore wind. It's often for us power at scale. We've seen actually a lot of job opportunities in offshore wind. We've seen the development of a lot of both local and regional supply chains in Denmark. It's definitely cost competitive because it also delivers more stable electricity, and again, the average costs of offshore wind has definitely fallen, and it has what we call the highest capacity of the renewable energy alternatives as such. So there's I mean, maybe for me, offshore wind is not the silver bullet, but it's part of the solution that we really need to drive forward. And together with other forms of renewable energy and battery storage, it is a way forward in the green transition in the energy sector. A lot of the challenges we have seen recently is around geopolitical challenges. We have some countries that are very much against wind energy and especially offshore for various reasons. So there's been some setbacks. We've also seen technical setbacks in terms of auctions, even and also in Denmark, that has not gone the way it was anticipated. Since offshore wind is very capex intensive, the increasing interest rates we saw during COVID actually made offshore wind more expensive than originally anticipated, etc. So there's been also supply chain constraints in the offshore wind industry as such. So there's been different kinds of setbacks and challenges in the sector. And last year in 2024, I think the world as a whole managed to install around 8 gigawatts of offshore, which seems very little compared to where we need to go to. But fortunately, there's a lot on the way. I think it's 48 gigawatts is already under construction and 56 under auctioning. So we will definitely, we expect to see an uptake in the use of offshore energy moving forward, both in Asia but also Latin America. The potential is really really good for offshore wind energy. So it is not easy, and it's not something you just do from one way to another, day to another. So it takes also a lot of collaboration, both between countries bilaterally, but it also takes a lot of collaboration at international multilateral level. And I think today and the launch of the report for me is just a perfect example of what we need to do much more of, where the Danish Energy Agency has collaborated with the Brazilian partners on what are the concrete things on the ground that we actually need to change, barriers we need to remove in order to open the market for offshore energy much better, as such in Brazil. And we from Denmark, we have some expertise that can be used, and of course it has to be adapted to local circumstances anywhere in the world. but we have a very clear policy of sharing everything we can share in terms of technical know-how and expertise. And I really hope that today will be part of that, that it really can help driving the offshore wind industry and opportunities in Brazil forward, but also can be used at a more international context as lessons learned and ways forward for offshore renewable energy. So I'll leave it at that. And again, thank you so much. This is another example of the really great collaboration we have between Denmark and Brazil, and I'm myself personally looking forward to coming back to Brazil twice within the next couple of months, actually, to move both this agenda but also the more political COP agenda forward with you Brazilian counterparts. So a huge thank you from my side.
So I'll jump in and I'll make it fast. I'll make your words all mine as well. I think that this has been an incredible collaboration with the embassy, with the Danish Energy Agency. I acknowledge totally that we need more and more collaboration and opportunities of win-win, opportunities of thinking and challenging ourselves. How can we accelerate the energy transition towards cleaner forms of energy, being agnostic, and at the same time thinking of different models, bringing more innovation to the process, and nothing better to do that if not thinking with different minds, sharing knowledges and coming together to make this possible. So I'd like to make my first comments very brief, but I see Bernardo here. I just wanted to tell a story that Danish, it's been a pleasure to interact with Danish Agency for a while now, and all the collaboration that we have done with really the spirit of coming together, and with Karina here as well in the ministry, and acknowledging all the efforts that the Ministry of Mines and Energy in Brazil has really done in trying to provide these different sources and opportunities so that we can unlock these different forms of energy within our system, and with that being able to make Brazil a prosperous place to unlock value, bring new forms of investment, add value towards different value chains and systems. So the idea really with this report was that we could look into what was the Danish experience, acknowledging in a very transparent way things that are challenging, because taking care of the environment, understanding that you have to respect the local people, the communities, understand that this is challenging because as the same process as within the offshore with oil and gas, the projects are expensive, the projects are capital intensive, and that we need to be prepared for that. And having all this in mind, we tried to bring together everything that has happened within Danish, what is evolving in Brazil in our environment, and especially what could be different forms of offtakes and opportunities to guarantee that we have a prosperous environment for investments in Brazil. So that said, I would like to really say that I'm happy to see this report coming alive, and that we have the opportunity to share all these different subjects that we have put together within the report. Laís, back to you.
Thank you both so much. We have like a great start with really inspiring messages. And now I'd like to invite Ambassador Eva Pedersen, the Danish ambassador to Brazil, to comment a little bit on the possibilities for Brazil and Denmark cooperation in the energy transition. Ambassador, you have the floor.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Lais. I'm very happy to be here. I also want to warmly greet all the colleagues from also Ole, especially thank you for also taking your time. It's great. And I'm so happy and looking for, I will see Ole next week because we have a great meeting in Copenhagen. And then we will be talking definitely about the pre-COP and the COP and so on. So looking forward, but also very much greeting Karina Araújo, Director of the Energy Transition Department at Brazil's Ministry of Mines and Energy. Of course, apart from Lais, also Rafael, our good colleagues and collaborators on this report from CEBRI, the Danish Energy Agency. So happy to always to see you. Global Offshore Wind Alliance representatives, Ocean Energy Pathway. I think we also have Eólica and everybody listening in online. So I think it's important. It has been stressed, but just to say that the result of the report is a result of collective efforts between Denmark and Brazil. And it's really thought as a contribution to the discussion on how to accelerate progress in offshore wind development. And Brazil is a global leader in renewable energy, and we celebrate from the Danish side its bold steps toward exploring offshore wind potential in Latin America. And seen from, let's say, a third-party perspective, from the Danish perspective, we see Brazil's energy transition as really, really remarkable also on a global stage. Over 80% of the country's electricity already comes from renewable resources. And your clear ambition and policies give us confidence that you will continue to set these global standards in clean energy. Over the past decades in Brazil, we see that wind power really has emerged as one of the key drivers of new capacity in Brazil. And we see offshore wind having a solid potential to become the next growth story. And it's the hope with this report, led by the Danish Energy Agency with CEBRI, that it can support the work of Director Karina and her team at the ministry, but of course will also inspire the wind industry in general, offering these comparative perspectives on streamlining consenting processes and other things that are in the report. And maybe just from my side, a few words on the Danish-Brazilian collaboration and the wind in area. I think we can say that we really started back in 2021. It was the Ministry of Mines and Energy and Danish partners, initially through our trade council at the Sao Paulo consulate. They had a very open and forward-looking dialogue on offshore wind. And those early discussions evolved into joint studies, workshops, regulatory reviews that also, I think, have contributed to today's report and is very much an important part of the current Brazilian-Danish partnership program between the Ministry of Mines and Energy and the Danish Energy Agency. So it's a program that we have to, just to say here for the sake of good order, it includes much more than wind. Wind is important, but also long-term planning, integration of variable renewables, and energy efficiency. And so our technical collaboration within this partnership program is guided, and I think it's been said before, but I just don't want to say it again, by the principle of mutual learning. I think we will also see that from the comment that come from our Danish partner later on, and on Brazil's priorities and policy framework. And within offshore wind, Denmark is able to bring our experience, both from Denmark, but also from other contexts where we have collaborated around the globe. And of course, combining it with Brazil's renewable energy leadership, innovative market dynamics, and its very established and recognized regulatory expertise. And from a Danish perspective, this partnership, this really, it enables us to learn from Brazil's very proven approaches. And we hope humbly to contribute positively through complementary insights and where these align with Brazil's own development vision. And then a few perspectives from Denmark on offshore wind in Brazil, as we humbly see it from our side. We understand the way we see it, Brazil's coastline, it enjoys abundant, steady winds and wide, shallow waters. It creates really ideal conditions for offshore wind farms. We have learned that Denmark's decades of experience in site investigation and tender may help Brazil optimize site selection and lower cost constructions. This is our hope. And I think, again, I think Ole also mentioned it, sometimes we have things that are done right and something we didn't do. So it's really about learning from what went well and what didn't go as good as we wanted it to. And again, by sharing best practices, our hope in this sense is to contribute to Brazil's first offshore wind project being both reliable and less costly. Secondly, we see that integrating offshore wind into Brazil's energy system can help balance hydropower seasonal variability, especially during droughts, when water level falls, output falls. We see that adding steady offshore wind generation will bolster the grid stability throughout the year, as we have seen it in Denmark, and I think we can contribute with our expertise in hybrid energy systems and grid management, drawing on approaches to ensure a continuous supply of clean power. And again, experience both for better and worse, where it went well and where we could see we learned from what didn't go so good. We understand, and I think coming a little bit back to what Ole also mentioned, Brazil's very strong workforce in offshore oil and gas. We had kind of the same experience in Denmark, especially maybe people talk a lot about the city of Esbjerg, but also on onshore wind. And it really provided for us, and it can provide here in Brazil, a ready pool of skilled labor and existing facilities. So we have learned from the Danish experience that repurposing these assets can accelerate offshore wind deployment and create new job opportunities. So there's a lot of talk about, you take it away, but then what comes? There's a lot of opportunities in offshore wind. And we have also experience in training programs and capacity buildings initiatives that we hope can support Brazil's workers and supply chains eventually, so ensure local industry to thrive alongside the development of this emerging sector. And least but not last, we see that developing wind farms farther from shore can avoid conflicts from land use, preserve the scenic coastlines, also important in Denmark, and minimize noise impacts for coastal communities. And this is an approach that can also avoid these sensitive marine habitats and respect fishing grounds and shipping routes when done really thoughtfully. And Denmark, we can share again our methods for marine spatial planning and stakeholder engagement, and hope to help Brazil in that sense create clear guidelines that balance both on one side the economic development with the environmental stewardship and social harmony that we also know is so important for Brazil, that is really also, as we see from our collaboration, a major concern. I think that's a word from me. We are super honored from the Danish embassy side to, support the ongoing collaboration between Brazil, led by Karina and her team, and the Danish Energy Agency, and to really see if and support this transformation of offshore wind potential into a sustainable reality. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Ambassador, for sharing this with us. This is a very solid partnership we can see, and we hope we have the opportunities to keep this mutual learning going on. And now I would like to invite you all to learn more about the main findings of the study that we are launching today. So I'll be inviting Rafael again, and also Federico Jensen, the special advisor and team lead of the Brazilian-Danish Partnership Program at the DA. You have the floor.
Thank you, Lais, and thank you both Ambassador Tonke and Ambassador Pedersen for the nice opening words, and of course Rafael as well for your nice opening words. I will be starting the presentation today, and then Rafael will take over when we reach Brazil. And we'll start with Denmark and the Danish experience, and then finish with Brazil. I would also like to say thank you to all the authors of the report. Some of them, I think most of them are here either as audience or also going to speak a bit later as well. So thank you for that. And also, of course, thank you to the Ministry of Mines and Energy as well for their engagement with the report, and also an internal review process as well that was performed. So just to also, I'll try to keep on time as well, since so that we have enough time, hopefully, also both for the panel speakers and perhaps even for some questions at the end. So just to get started, we've, as already been mentioned, maybe you can go to the first slide already. We've created this report in the spirit of inspiration, in the spirit of just providing some knowledge of out there in the void of intellectual discussion, so that we could try to inform a little bit some of the discussions that are going to be being had in Brazil this year and following years, and that have already been happening in Brazil, given especially in the context of the approved law here in January on the offshore wind law. As showcasing in the slide, the objective of the report is to analyze the experiences of Denmark and Brazil in offshore wind development from a consenting perspective, and I'll get to that in a second, what it means. Most importantly is to understand institutional design, how to organize institutions to be able to promote offshore wind and to develop offshore wind, and in particular to showcase best practices where there are any, or at least showcase the practices out there that we can find, and that showcase there is no one pathway, but that showcase how experiences are being had in different markets and different parts of the world. But why are these institutional designs important? And as you can see, maybe if you can move the slide, the reason why institutional designs are important, if we can move to the next slide, yes, it's because and as already been said, offshore wind is expensive, is a large infrastructure project. It carries a lot of risks, and it needs important, and it's quite sensitive to regulatory matters. So just to name a few of these risks, I mean, environmental and procedural risks, the ambassadors have already kind of mentioned, particularly delays in permits, problems in the environmental assessments, litigation, etc. Those are large risks for developers. Regulatory risks as a category, discussion in particular of coordination problems between authorities, and I'll get to that point a bit later as well. And in this geopolitical moment that we've been already also mentioning, political risks and tend to have come further and further up the chain of risk management, right? Finally, more on the developer side and less on the regulatory side, but it's still very relevant, project failure and investment risks that cannot fully be attributed to government and regulation, but that can be helped along the way by good policy and transparency. Yes, so next slide. So what does that lead us to is that in order for these risks to be managed, not to be solved or really to, I mean, risks exist in any type of investment project, but to be managed, we talk about good consenting processes. And what does that mean? That means an overarching term that ensures project meets environmental, safety, navigational, and grid standards while complying to all types of international and local regulation. And it requires, and it's part of getting license, permits, and approvals, and essentially how these licenses, permits, and approvals are organized. It's, of course, mostly focused on the generation part of the project, but it's also entails transmission, distribution, consumption of the generated electricity, and includes also, perhaps, as we also discussed in the report, electrofuel production facilities, or it could include. Some of these remarks, particularly these more general remarks about consenting process, institutional design, etc., come from chapter 2 of the report, where we also review different consenting models. So if you go to the next slide, here, looking at international experience and looking at the Danish experience as well, we categorize into 3 consenting models that we see out there in the world and that can provide inspiration also for Brazil. Centralized model, where a national body monitors all the permitting processes and has a single point of contact for the developers and as an end-to-end process. hybrid model, which combines centralized supervision with decentralized inputs for different institutions and aims to desegregate some responsibilities, but also integrate better some local concerns. So especially in larger countries, you see that the local federal systems, etc., requires some more hybrid models. And then you have decentralized systems where all regulatory authorities have their permits and licenses that they require, but they're not particularly organized. We see in offshore wind perhaps a trend towards more and more centralized systems, given the clear need from industry to reduce lead times from idea to project. But that's a general trend, but not a necessary conclusion for anything. Yes, so just after we created this model, or these 3 different models, we categorized these models, we also reviewed different markets beyond Denmark and Brazil, and we did this in the spirit that we, as the Danish Energy Agency, also don't have all the answers for all contexts. So we also try to take experience from all parts of the world. And at the Danish Energy Agency, we collaborate with other 25 countries, where we also work on offshore wind in several of them. So we also try to take those experiences and bring them to Brazil. So if you go to the next slide, in doing that, in chapter 3, we worked a little bit both with mature and offshore wind markets, explaining their consenting process shortly, providing some resources so that people, when they read the report, can also pick and choose different markets and look at how they're doing offshore wind. One of the trends that we're seeing in particular is that mature markets tend to have a bit more streamlined consenting processes, and again, trying to decrease lead times. But there is still many hurdles also in mature markets, as you would call them. Complications between environmental regulations, complications between like cross-border issues, particularly in the North Sea, between Denmark, Germany, the Netherlands, Belgium, etc. This is one of the hot topics that is coming, at least in Europe. While in emerging markets, we see also different areas, but particularly to highlight would be regulatory fragmentation. And this is a topic that it is very relevant, because the more regulatory transparency and clear processes, developers tend to see those markets as more attractive. So that's chapter 2 and 3, and then we go into the specific case of Denmark. And in particularly, regulatory fragmentation is something that we have some experience, or something that we tend to tell ourselves that we are relatively good at in Denmark, which is our one-stop shop mechanism for permitting and consenting, where several countries seem to be following this trend, which is that us as the Danish Energy Agency have gotten the legal mandate by the Danish Parliament to be the sole authority on permitting the large parts of the permits of the offshore wind projects, and also coordinate with other governmental agencies and stakeholders to ensure the single point of entry and exit. As the figure shows, this is just a few of the institutions that we coordinate with, and everything is centralized to the Danish Energy Agency, maritime authorities, coastal authorities, defense, transmission system operator, environment, etc., that we coordinate with. This is indicative. There's more agencies that we have to coordinate to get projects to fruition, but this is something we go in detail within the chapter 4. One particular thing that is also relevant to discuss here is that Denmark has had 2 consenting processes, the centralized one and a more hybrid concept of an open door system. And we go into detail into both in the report, because we also believe both are relevant with the current structure of the Brazilian consenting process that Rafaela is going to talk to in a second. But yeah, so the next slide, and just to give some more context about why Denmark talks about offshore wind. Denmark is a pioneer in offshore wind development. We put the first wind turbines at sea in 1991. Those have by now been even decommissioned and taken off sea again, which is very few countries have already gone through the whole process from consenting to building to decommissioning. And more than 50% of our generation capacity comes from onshore and offshore wind, with offshore wind playing a larger and larger role as we see demand rising for different demand offtakes, but in particularly with hydrogen being a key offtaker for Denmark, and hydrogen export being a key strategy. And I'll get to that in a second. One of the things also to discuss here is that, as you see, Denmark right now has about 2.69 gigawatts of offshore wind operational, has 1 gigawatt in construction, which is the little blue top triangle you see on the left side, and it has upwards of 6 to 9 gigawatts in planning stages, which it's site allocation, site investigations, and preparation. Yes, so just the next slide. So lessons learned. I mean, that's, as I said, in the spirit of inspiration, what we're here to do. Denmark underscores the importance of transparency, at least the perception of the importance of legal security and a clear government goal and support for developers, and also the spirit of international collaboration for the development of this technology. One of the things that we still believe in and that we can see that is important is that the process still has to be faster, the process of consenting, and this is something that the Renewable Energy Directive in 2023 clearly points to governments to do in Europe. This is also something that, given the failed tender, also comes as an example of we both need to do consenting faster, but we also need to be more ready to shift the strategies when markets move faster than governments do. And then, yes, there is this continuous monitoring and revision of market maturation that comes from that learning. Yes, and then my final point on the future, really, next slide, please, is which we do also have in the paper, in the report, is why are we building 6 to 9 gigawatts of extra offshore wind when we have a top load of 6.8 gigawatts on land right now, right? So the reason is that we see a future with large need for e-fuels. We see a future for hydrogen production and hydrogen export, and we see a future where hydrogen can become a new revenue stream for Denmark, also reduce renewable curtailments that and alleviate grid stress, and that's something that we are still with some revisions at this moment, but still believing in right now. As for example, the German-Danish hydrogen pipeline being now in development phase after securing financing, and as well as the North Sea Wind Power Hub Consortium showcase as future pathways for Denmark. That will be it for me. Thank you so much. And I'll leave the floor to Rafaela to talk about Brazil.
So back to me here. Hope everybody's listening. Yes, right. Yeah. So in the Brazilian context, we are in looking to countries such as Denmark that has already evolved significantly in offshore wind. And we acknowledge that there is a huge potential in terms of renewable sources. And within this renewable sources, solar and wind are on land very well established. And according to the World Bank, Brazil has this huge potential for the offshore, and it's an astonishing amount that could range up to 1,200 gigawatts. There is an extensive offshore experience, and when we mention that is because whoever has seen the size and the structure of offshore wind, it really requires a lot of equipment and is capital intensive and needs a preparation and a planning that is similar to what we experience, for instance, in oil and gas whenever planning a new FPSO and exploration. So having a broader and a huge extensive experience in offshore exploration definitely is something that will facilitate the transition for offshore wind. You can pass. I don't know if, yeah, here. So within the consenting process, and here again, acknowledging all the effort that the ministry has put forward together with Eólica and others here, but definitely highlighting these two institutions in terms of moving forward the regulation. So the potential of offshore wind through the law that was approved, this legal framework in the beginning of this year, while we were evolving in our report, it provides a lot of information, maritime regions of which within the territorial zone, the continental zone, and exclusive economic zone. So there's a wide range which has been mapped as areas where you can provide the consenting process. Then the development of any offshore wind project will require a lot of interaction within the institutions. Hopefully, we will move towards a one-stop shop, something that is easier, so that these institutions are able to integrate and accelerate this process, because there are several. So the National Petroleum Agency, IBAMA, which is the environmental agency, Navy. So there are several, because of course we must take care that all the issues are well taken care of. And then the declaration of priority of prior interference. So this is important, an opportunity to identify early stage of any critical interference. It must be in terms of fishing, the community. So all of these issues must be taken into consideration. You can pass. So here in Brazil, what we see in the consenting process is a planned offer and a permanent offer. The main difference here that will be established in Brazil is that the planned offers, you will have the definition of the granting of the authority in terms of what area is being granted, and then you'll have an auction for this area, and we'll have a bid. So whoever has the better qualifications will be the concession, will gain the concession to use the area. However, there's a second opportunity which will be permanent offers, in which we will have a public call, and if you have multiple stakeholders' interest in the determined area, you will have the evaluation of who has the best criteria to gain the area, or if there's a single stakeholder, if he attends the minimum requirements, he will also gain the authorization to use the area. You can pass. And then within this spatial planning, it is crucial that you have these tools to help the sectoral planning, identifying what are the areas that will be under concession, so we can really guarantee that all the issues are taken into account. So from an industrial perspective, from if you already have within the area other industrial facilities, if there is any issue with fishing or other forms of animals, birds, whatever in the region. So guarantee that you have a evaluation that really takes into account all the sustainability around the project will be considered. You can pass. And then key strategies for developing these points, learning from what we have seen, that are efforts that the Danish Energy Agency pointed out in the report, and whatever and all of the experiences that have been taken into consideration. So a single window system to simplify the process, something closer to a one-stop shop is really helpful. Legal certainty. So if as much predictability that you can have this helps whoever wants to invest in the sector, simplifying. So the licensing, of course, we always have to take care of the environment and sustainability and communities, but having really a predictability and simplification of this licensing, which doesn't mean less quality of this environment license, it must be taken into consideration. Criteria that go beyond price are important as well. So predicting demand and all kinds of engagements. Also, we wanted to highlight that multiple stakeholders must be taken into consideration and listen towards this process. So these drivers will really help move forward this form of energy. Yes, you can move. And here, this was really important for us and is an issue wherever you go, differently from a moment in time where you only had one form of energy, and that was oil and gas. Nowadays, as we transition, we have several forms of energy. These energy forms are competing, and the preparedness in terms of the technology being available and the cost of this technology is an issue, because countries need to continue to be competitive. So while looking into this report and acknowledging that the environment process is something important, another point that is extremely important is what form of demand, who will be the off-takers. So this is one thing that we stressed within our study, that we have to have a competitive form of energy that costs we must have a lot of innovation and a lot of collaboration and thinking different forms of business models that would accelerate forms of demand within this for delivering energy in greater amounts. So here, electrification can be a trigger. Electrification of oil and gas platforms, data centers, as long as you have predictability in the amount, so you can have curtailment. So you have, of course, you have to be able to store the energy. It has to have some continuity. So, but this would be one trigger. Green hydrogen in Brazil, that can be used within the industry, that can be used for exportation. So different forms of triggering demands is something that we have to look into. Yes, you can pass. And then so the potential here, one of the forms that the government is also regulating and bringing, so within the special incentive regime for hydrogen production, the hydro, the government's providing tax benefits and credits for a 5-year period, so to promote and the deployment of hydrogen, which continues to be a cost of energy, which is still expensive, but we have to see forms of how can we diminish this cost so that we can have a higher implementation of this form of energy. So position Brazil as a global leader in low emission hydrogen production and development and consolidate these hubs in Brazil. So again, here, what we see from our researches is within the industrial complex, hydrogen can be one of the forms of decarbonization, and others that can be used, for instance, in different ways within the maritime area and so on. So you can pass. So here, potential applications, as I was mentioning, and for the Brazil, including offshore wind, to produce derivatives such as ammonia, nitrogen, fertilizers, oxygen, methanol, sustainable aviation fuels. These are all forms of promoting these low carbon technologies, and we should be looking closely into them if we want to broaden the opportunities to use greater amounts of energy coming from the offshore wind. And definitely we have here starting to have examples. We need to expand these examples, but in the Northeast region, for instance, we have the low emission hydrogen production being discussed and evolving, such as the port of Pecém, which hosts the Será export processing zone, which facilitates industrial areas and administrative support services. So these are examples that are starting to appear and definitely can be broadened as much as we can make this project competitive, economically competitive. You can move forward. And then, so to the conclusions, Brazil has one of the best offshore wind resources. This is clear in this study and from studies before. It is key for this consenting process is formulated with clear clarity and transparency, because the development and we need predictability. We have seen this worldwide, that predictability is key for offshore wind market, and regulatory signals it is very sensitive to these regulatory systems. The marine special planning, environmental assessments, stakeholder engagement, all of these must be taken into consideration if we want this to be a process in which community is listened and accepts this form of energy. So the social acceptance is also something very important for this form of energy. So the offtake mechanism, because in the end of the day, the sectors will have to understand if there is economical viability for this form of energy, if it makes sense, because this is a vehicle and it's not a product by itself. So we need to see what are the industries that will be willing to consume this form of energy. And therefore this must be taken into consideration. We must estimate different forms of business models, and this is important. And last but not least, consider as well, as other regions are considering, that we can be exporting, so not the form of the energy generated from wind, but energy generated from wind in the form of hydrogen. And then this hydrogen being exported is also a possibility, and one that, for instance, Denmark is prioritizing. Can or cannot be the case for Brazil. We still have to see. And again, here, what we'll predict is a lot of being very agnostic in the process, and guaranteeing that we have a competitive process within the different forms of technologies and energies being offered in the region. So basically, these are the conclusions, and I'm eager to see what Bernardo, Karina, Mish, and others have to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Federico and Rafaela. These were very valuable insights, and I hope this has made everyone here excited and curious to read the paper. And now we will move on to our discussion panel, and I'm really happy because we have a list of great names here. And these are experts who are dealing with the state-of-the-art of offshore, and I'm happy to introduce each of you. We have Karina Araújo, Director of the Energy Transition Department of the Brazilian Ministry of Mines and Energy. Amisha Patel, Head of Secretariat of the Global Offshore Wind Alliance, GOA. We have Julia Paleta, Head of Ocean Energy Pathway in Brazil. We also have Bernardo Puzel Niedermann, Director at Goldschmidt and former Chief Advisor at the DEA. And also Matheus Eurico Noronha, which is Head of Offshore Wind Energy at Eólica. Be very welcome. I am really honored to have you here with us today. So yeah, moving on to the questions, I'm going to start with Karina. So Karina, Brazil will soon be hosting COP30, and combating climate change is the hot topic in the country right now. And we all know that decarbonizing is a great part of this conversation. So I would like to ask, how is the Ministry of Mines and Energy planning to align the potential for offshore wind deployment in Brazil with the decarbonization strategy of the country?
Hi, thank you, Lais, for asking for this question. And I, first of all, would like to thank you for participating on these initiatives and to have this report for Brazil about Danish experience and Brazilian context. So I want to congratulate to DA, Bernardo and Federico to make this happen, and to CEBRI, Rafaela and colleagues from CEBRI here to prepare this report for us at MME, for MME team, all my team. Is very important to us to receive these analyses, to receive this point of view, this conclusion, these recommendations, looking for different countries and opportunities we have to establish our process here in Brazil in a good way, a flexible way, and learn during the process. So thank you for that. And in behalf of my team and the TA and the minister also. So as you see during the presentation, offshore wind holds a significant potential to generate large quantities of clean energy, and Brazil is a big amount of potential to produce electricity energy from offshore wind, and this is considered a good source for power generation for energy transition, as the ambassador said, and the embassy said also is a offshore wind participate in the Danish context, big portion to energy generation, renewable generation. Then, so we see in different countries this good participation from offshore wind on the metrics to generate electricity. To develop offshore wind in Brazil is on top of increasing in the recent years, as I start working on that in 2021. But before that, EPE, or National Agency and Energy Research, or IBAMA, or National Environmental Institution, working to discuss how and when, or what we have to do to make offshore wind happen in Brazil. So this is about increasing after the years, and these reports make these, keeping the discussions and go ahead on the discussions. So we have recently regulatory definitions were present, and some decrees ordinance, but on this week, January on this year, we have the law approved. So we have right now in Brazil a law dedicated for offshore wind. So this, as a result, the discussions we have done during the past years, how and the steps Brazil have to do to make this sector happen in Brazil. And as everyone knows, I think it's very important to highlight Brazil is a big producer in renewable energy. So our metrics, electricity metrics, is high participation, have a high participation in renewable, almost 19%. But we have opportunities to expand, to do more, and to keep on these goals to decarbonization, to make more renewable. And you have this opportunity as you have a lot of potential here in Brazil. So we have opportunity to expand investments in renewable energy in the country to meet the prospects for growth in electricity demand. As you see a national plan to 12-15, next around 25 years ahead, we see a perspective to increase the demand for energy, as Rafaela showed to us. Electricity demand in different subs could be electrified next year, or next fuels, renewables fuels we can produce in Brazil. So you can use this new sector, the new opportunity to expand investments in renewable energy in our country and produce of new fuels such as hydrogen or ammonia, methanol, green diesel. You can use these a bit to make this happen. As a power to X strategy, you will see that on the report, we have Denmark have this strategy, power to X, to use renewable energy to make this new fuel. So we have this opportunity, we have this window, as you see, for offshore wind project can play an important role. And with all this picture, all these opportunities, Brazil can strengthen your position as global leader in renewable energy production and promotion of low carbon technology as well. And you can take advantage of global change in energy metrics not only to meet these our electricity needs, but also contribute significantly to the global energy transition as internally context. So right now, we and MME, we are working on different steps. We are looking for global offshore wind scenario globally. We are looking for scenario of market in Brazil. We are looking for a potential also to produce offshore wind and working to have a regulatory framework very established. And this is how offshore wind can be aligned with decarbonization, have another source of energy in Brazil that could attend the electricity demand and produce new fuels, as we discuss here, like Port-to-X strategy. So you have quite alignment with these two, if offshore wind and our goals to decarbonization.
Thank you so much, Karina. Now I'll move on to Amisha. I would like to talk about how offshore wind projects require this multi-layered environmental and social impact assessment, which can face very strong community resistance. So I would like to ask Amisha, from GOA's global perspective, what are the most effective engagement strategies to secure the community acceptance of wind offshore projects?
Thank you. Thank you so much for your question. And just firstly, I'd like to congratulate the team at CEBRI and the DEA colleagues at the DEA on the publication of this report. I've read it, and with GOA being a global community which really comes together to raise ambition on offshore wind and sharing best practice, I can see how valuable this resource is going to be in this forum, but also widely to our global community. So thank you so much. And also just to say, Brazil joined GOA at COP28. And since then, we've seen such significant process, the journey on the bill and its right to passage, to more recently news and progress of the pilots, and seeing all the progress being taken forward on unlocking this market opportunity for offshore wind. And it's really, really great to see that level of progress, and we're really here to support that effort. Now, to your question, going back to a remark that our climate ambassador made in his observations around there being many setbacks around public acceptance. So this multi-layered environmental and social impact and this community resistance, you know, it's very cross-cutting, as our sector is, in terms of the contribution that offshore wind has in the climate arena. Also the contribution it makes in terms of our energy security and our energy transition, but also in terms of ocean protection and conservation and the role the technology has to play in there. So this also requires a multifaceted aspect in terms of our messaging overall. But if we're looking at particular engagement strategies to secure social acceptance, we can draw on the report, actually, which really has comprehensive examples. I think principally it's really about early, transparent and sustained engagement with communities and stakeholders. And this really has to be early and inclusive consultation. And if we draw on the example from Denmark, where developers and authorities conduct consultations with fisheries, environmental NGOs and local governments during the marine spatial planning phase, this upfront dialogue has reduced conflicts and helped integrate offshore wind into broader coastal strategies. And we're seeing this approach replicated in many pockets of the world. So that's very, very critical. Transparent and accessible communication, also data sharing. So I think the report also draws on the UK's approach here, where developers are required to undertake extensive public hearings as a part of their development consent orders. And this shows how accessible and fact-based information can really help build this critical trust and have this pathway of communication for these large-scale projects, again, from the very, very early stages. Drawing to Brazil's emerging framework, this illustrates the coexistence and co-benefits of offshore wind as well. The importance of aligning offshore wind with existing marine users, with I think with nearly 100 projects awaiting licensing, Brazilian authorities are emphasizing co-use with fisheries and leveraging offshore oil and gas expertise to create new industrial and employment opportunities. So really highlighting that broader socioeconomic benefits of development as well. Nature positive aspects, again, taking the report's examples from around Germany and the Netherlands and demonstrating how robust environmental assessments and marine spatial planning can safeguard biodiversity as well, and whilst accelerating deployment. And I think we heard, I think from Rafaela's presentation, that there was a mention of sort of non-price criteria being featured in some auctions, and sustainability really holds a key aspect in this as well. So again, really underpinning that towards social acceptance and our license to operate as an industry as well. And lastly, my last point is really around building these long-term relationships and open dialogue, not only around the development phases of the project, but throughout its life cycle as well. And drawing another example from the report, in South Korea, developers are legally required to consult with local residents and address complaints throughout the project life cycle. So this really highlights that importance of ongoing dialogue rather than an on-off approach. So I think there's a menu of opportunities from around the world that we can draw upon. It really highlights how much development and how much experience we have accomplished as an industry over the last 20, 30 years. And we're continuing to evolve as well, but building trust and demonstrating tangible benefit for communities are always going to be decisive. And whilst we can have these examples of best practices from around the world, I think what the report really demonstrates is really important adaptation to national and local contexts, and that's what's going to show us success and collaboration moving forwards. So I'll pause there. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Amisha. It was really helpful. And I would like to move on to Julia. Julia, energy security is also a big question right now. So I would like to know your take on what role offshore wind could play to diversify and strengthen energy security.
Well, thanks a lot, Lais, for your question. I would like just to start thanking CEBRI and DA for the invitation. It's an honor for me to be here. So going to your question, I would like to start just saying, just going around the concept of energy security, which is ensuring the availability of energy, right, without interruptions at affordable price. But we need to consider that this concept has changed over the, over the last decades a lot, because in the energy fossil fuel era, this concept was much more associated to the capacity that the countries were having to secure energy resource. While right now, in the era of the energy transition, energy security concept has evolved in a way that is really much associated to the way we build the resilient power systems, the way we access technology and mineral supply chains. So when it touch on your question relating to offshore wind, for sure that diversifying the energy matrix with new sources such as offshore wind, it's a strategy towards energy security to system resilience. But offshore wind, besides being a new technology that it can help this diversification, that can help enhancing system resilience, it creates energy independence, it can reduce land pressure, it can boost economic growth. It has a lot of potential for scalability as well, but it has a very interesting role that was mentioned here today before by Ambassador, which is a complementary role, especially in countries that has a reliance on renewable energy generation, which is especially in hydro and solar, which is the case for Brazil, right? Brazil, for instance, we have an electricity matrix almost 90% renewable based. We have 60% reliance on hydro, 7% reliance on solar. So when you look at this context, offshore wind can play an extremely interesting role, especially because when we are looking for the seasonal complementarity, we have hydro, and for instance, when we look at hydro generation, we know that we have periods of dry periods, right? And the wind blows more consistently during the dry periods. So we have this complementary between hydro and wind, and it's a seasonal complementary. And we also have hourly complementarity with solar generation. So because when the wind blows, they blow more consistently during the nights, and that's when we don't have sun shining and we don't have solar generation. So this can be translated in really great portfolio effects, this complementarity. But I want to add another layer here, because it's very important that we observe that now climate change has been playing a major role. It has been influencing our energy systems. It is impacting energy supply, energy demand. We can see the demand side, for example, we are being impacted by increasing demand, for example, cooling services, while when you look at the supply side, the energy systems are becoming very more dependent on the climatic conditions. So when you look at solar generation, hydrogen generation, biofuels, wind, they are all very much vulnerable to climate variables that are no longer predictable as they were in the past, right? Given the climate change issues. So this means that countries with very large portion of renewable energy, like Brazil, can face severe challenges to ensure energy security, especially in this context of climate change. So my point here, what I would like to emphasize is that for sure, we are very proud. We are very impressive energy matrix. We have a very impressive power mix, electricity mix, but we need to size all the vulnerabilities that are embedded in this context of our energy matrix and in the context of climate change. So having 60% of our mix based on hydro depends a lot on water availability, and science keeps telling us that river flows are changing, rainfall patterns are changing, and these are posing major threats to our energy systems. So my contention here is that offshore wind for Brazil is not only a strategy to portfolio diversification. It has to be a strategy towards ensuring our power system, especially considering the great complementarity that we have with hydro. So instead of building additional fossil fuel structures, infrastructures that would imply in additional emissions, it would imply also in lock-in effects, right? Because we would have building additional fossil fuel infrastructure, more reliance on a carbon-intensive infrastructure. We could have a clean future using offshore wind. So just to close and to close your question, I think it's very important that we bring this approach to our national energy planning. The need to tackle energy security, consider not only the diversification, but also anticipating climate change effects, and how offshore wind is very important, a very important technology to enhance security, to enhance resilience, besides being a really great economic opportunity, as the study already shows, as already mentioned to everyone here. So that's basically my comment here on your question. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Julia. These are amazing points that you brought to the discussion. Now I'll move on to Bernardo. one of the most interesting parts of the study is that about the one-stop shop system that has been established in Denmark. And the document really stresses how this system is important in order to reduce uncertainty and also to provide long-term stability. So my question to you is, what concrete aspects of this model could be realistically adapted to Brazil's, considering the legal and institutional context?
Thank you so much, Lais, and thank you for the entire team at CEBRI, also at my co-authors here that are in the room. I think if we have to do like one takeaway from the exercise, is that the principle that has to guide us when we're developing this type of public policy is that we need to make a difficult decision in a simple way. Because there is a lot of elements that we're moving at the same time, and if the procedure is difficult, then this has a lot of impacts in the entire cycle. And we need to be very mindful of that. That said, I think the task is difficult in itself. Simplifying is difficult. It's complex. And I think that what the Danish experience shows is that centralizing and streamlining the process can help create a stable environment for investment in offshore wind. But we also have a moving target in the sense that we are seeing that the environmental requirements and social requirements are getting more and more difficult with time. So we basically need a responsive system, a system that allows us to evaluate environmental parameters, social parameters, etc., comprehensively, but also with agility. So again, because that will have a direct impact on the amount of jobs that we're going to create, on the advancement of technology. Just paraphrasing what Julia just said, it's going to have an impact on energy security as well. So we're talking a lot, not only about how much time it's going to take just to do the environmental impact assessment. We're talking about the amount of time that is going to impact all of those very, very important aspects in terms of, it also impacts the economy and so on. I think the work that the Ministry of Mines and Energy has done in Brazil is remarkable in the sense of pushing, this agenda in creating a legal framework at a legal level, right, as a law level. And now we see with a lot of interest what is going to happen in the enactment, the implementation of the law, these aspects. And I think, to answer your question directly, I think there has to be a philosophy in the implementation process and the infralegal requirements that can help simplify and coordinate the different efforts of the different agencies. At IBAMA level, what is going to happen at the level of the other ministries and agencies that are going to deal with the licensing process. I must confess that I see this with very good eyes. I see that there is a lot of very prepared authorities, civil servants, and also a very active industry participation in this. It doesn't mean that they're all going to agree, and that's part of the process. But we have seen at a comparative level that if the philosophy is right in terms of that we need to make these difficult decisions in a simplified way, and we need to do it, in a fast pace because time is of the essence, then we'll probably have very good results. And also taking a point that was mentioned by Amisha and also both ambassadors, I would like to highlight that in this regard, international cooperation between governments and international organizations and stakeholders is of the essence. We need to be able to learn from each other's experiences. This was also mentioned. We've not only had very good experiences in Denmark and in Europe, we've also had setbacks. Talking about those difficult situations, talking about, you know, what is happening with the support schemes, what is happening at the licensing level, talking about all of these aspects, how we're going to be able to create the human resources to be able to attend these necessities in the future is going to be very, very important. And this also, you know, shows how important this type of programs that the Danish Energy Agency and with the Ministry of Mines and Energy and CEBRI has it's just very important for the discussions that we're having at a comparative level. And I think this exercise that we did with the report will help to set like a first layer of what is happening around the world. Hopefully it'll inspire other people to write about it, to read about it, and that we can communicate one another. And also something that was said by Amisha that I think it's very, very important is that the people like us that work in the energy industry, we're not that many. And we circulate, you know, in different roles, you know, countries and etc. But we develop long-lasting relationships, and that serves the purpose for the energy transition. So we need to treasure that. So thank you so much for the invitation, and looking forward to going to Brazil again in the future. Thank you.
Amazing, Bernardo. Thank you so much. And now with Mateus. Well, the report notes that 96 offshore wind projects are now listed at IBAMA, waiting the environmental licensing. So my question to you is, from Eólica's perspective, what are the main bottlenecks causing this backlog, and what immediate reforms could accelerate approvals without undermining environmental standards?
Wonderful. Thanks so much, Laís. Thanks so much for CEBRI and all Danish Energy Agency and representatives from the Danish government. It's amazing being here with you guys and participating, giving contributions to the document. Also seeing your faces, Bernardo, Julia, Rafaela, Eva, Laís. It's great to be here. It's great to be once again with CEBRI. I believe, guys, before starting pointing out these issues, roads to markets to decarbonization is a good way to complement what Julia was saying. We're blowing to good directions when it comes to offshore wind energy and onshore wind energy. The government is doing so much. I see here Karina, and we had approved the law 50,097 beginning of this year, but we still need some complements to do for Infralegal and having the sea leasing auction as a next step for offshore wind energy. The companies nowadays are waiting for this next step, but government and all the institutions are working hard. Especially recently, we have released an ordinance by the government and also a public hearing for the methodology proposal of these areas. And when I said to you guys about roads to market is a great way to start paving the way for decarbonization. This report that we have here, report that talks about consenting process for offshore wind, is the real points that can fill the gaps that we are right now in the industry. So we talked about non-price criteria. We talked about consenting process, environmental issues, and talking with communities and engaging the stakeholders to promote offshore wind. And I believe we are in this moment to structure the law considering all these points in this methodology. So Brazil is moving in a great direction when it comes to offshore wind. Usually entrepreneurs say, look, we need to do it fast, but we're doing it in a pace that is good for the market and trying to understand what are the gaps the industry needs to do. Right now, we're talking about this methodology. We've been discussing some directions that we can have with the Energy Council here in Brazil, providing information and try to put the experience that we have right now in onshore wind energy to offshore wind energy. For those who don't know, here in Brazil, we have more than 35 gigawatts of onshore wind energy. And as Julia mentioned, the complementation between the resources that we have right now in our country was really important to avoid blackouts, to avoid other issues related to security and infrastructure in our country. And we believe offshore wind energy can play a great role for next coming years. The point also that I like to highlight in the end of this report, you guys can check it out that we have hydrogen perspectives and great ways to construct these roads to market. That's why I start my speech over here talking about roads to market. Because that's what we need for Brazil right now. There's no way to talk about different resources, different renewable energies instead of the context of Brazil if we don't find ways to having the increase of the demand. Okay, so this is important. I believe the Denmark addressed it pretty well in the document. Because Brazil is facing this moment, and this moment is a relevant moment if you want to give signals to the supply chain. It's impossible to develop offshore wind energy if you don't give signals to the supply chain. So these two steps are really important. I think they were really well addressed in the report, which are regulation that we are working on right now with the methodology proposed by the government, and also the regulation and the landmarks we're having in the last years. And the second, value chain and the productive chain. If we don't give signals to regulation, there's no way of having a supply chain, and then we will see this spillovers affecting the other markets around the world. We saw this happening in UK. We saw this happening in other countries. Despite we have mature countries in offshore wind all around the world, signals for the supply chain will be really interesting. And I believe Brazil is paving the way with the regulation in this way. I think this is our great points. We are reaching out 11, but I'll be open to clarify any questions you guys have. And again, it's a great honor representing Eólica, Elvia, Bernardo, Inci, Bernardo, Eva, and my other colleagues that are over here.
Amazing, Mateus. And now talking to all of you, thank you so much because you brought amazing points to the discussion. We covered from energy security to community acceptance and passing through this message that Bernardo brought to us as well about this powerful network of people working in the field of wind offshore and how important these ties are to pushing this forward. It is really important, and it was amazing hearing so many different perspectives, but also very much aligned in this purpose. And now I would like to bring Rafaela back again to conclude with the closing remarks.
So many things being said, but I think that the big message is no doubt that there is a lot of opportunities that it is important to have all kinds of different minds thinking together, and the more and more collaboration we can have within this subject and with other forms of energy within the transition is very, very important. So Bernardo brought a topic that I think it's very important, which is highlighting and being very transparent about setbacks, about challenges, because the more transparency we have within these discussions, the more we can have like concrete actions to overcome these challenges. So this report really was really genuine in trying to bring forward this kind of transparency and honest talk. And we definitely want to explore more collaboration with OEP, with Eólica, with Denmark, and with with the ministries and all different minds thinking together so that we can really be able to speed up different forms of technology, of energy that can bond together economic development, social development, and environment development, because that's what the world needs. So thank you very much. I think that would be my final words, and really acknowledging here the relevance for us to having this quality of debate and this kind of partnership with everybody that is here today with us.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you all so much. I hope you check the report at the website. I hope this is the beginning.
Karina, I think, has her hands. Hopefully I don't know if she's here or she left. I don't know if she wanted to say something or she left.
Karina is here.
Oh, she's just saying thank you. Okay.
Just to say thank you, because I'm now in the Uber, I'm moving, but thank you.
Okay, thank you. Bye-bye,
Thank you,
everybody.
guys. Ciao, ciao.
Rafaela, thank you. Bye-bye, everyone.
Great.
Thank you. Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you very much.